Good morning, everybody. I haven't live streamed in a moment. When I say that it has been rough, I am underestimating. But what better thing to bring to a morning live stream than misdiagnosis and the outcome and outfall of what actually happens? One of the things that drives me most nuts about misdiagnosis or underdiagnosis for people with chronic illnesses, especially invisible ones, is that they literally don't get seen, right? Like there's people are at their houses doing the thing. There's nobody to talk to, nobody to see. It's a little rough. I wanted to talk about what it looks like to be stuck at home doing the thing, taking care of yourselves and not being available to ask for the support. A lot of support movements in the world live or die on their visibility, and invisible disabilities are, I think, one of the hardest ones, because even us who are very social, very interested in talking about it, end up basically in bed alone. I know that one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is that we do not have a culture of asking for help. We don't have a culture of helping neighbors. The standard North American idea is that you get mad at your neighbors, but you don't know them, you don't help them. We have utterly destroyed the concept of village, the narrative of taking care of people who live near you. I actually started this, part of the reason I streamed is that I got myself a work order from the city that says that I have to mow my lawn and it needs to be completed in the next couple of days. Actually, it says that it needed to be completed a couple days ago, but I wasn't told about that. Love that. There was no first notice. So what do people do? What do people do when their neighbors are willing to complain about them constantly? We're the horrible house on the street, because I am a single mother to 4 children, all of which have medical needs as well, neurodiversities, queer diversity, and physical diversity. All of us do something, deal with something. And as a recently laid off professor, I spend all of my time making sure that we have food and warmth and health and mental space. And when children are struggling with their mental health, those things come first. And yet there is no support for that. There's nothing you can put on your door. There's no connection. So people complain about you rather than checking on you. And for me, that is a privilege. It is a privilege to be able to complain, to have enough time, energy, and money to complain rather than doing something about it. And the idea that the quality of how well you live is based on the quality of you as a person is the underpinning of patriarchal capitalism. People say that capitalism doesn't work. I actually don't believe that. I think it is patriarchal capitalism that doesn't work. I don't think the trading of goods using money is the problem. I think that we don't have a way of making it not tied to our worth as people. And that's a uniquely patriarchal statement. Whenever I use the term patriarchy, I like to gloss it a little bit. I do not mean that men are bad. I do not mean that white people are bad. Some of them are, of course, and some of them aren't. I do not mean that heterosexual people are bad. I do not mean that cis people are bad. I am discussing a specific group of previous and now their next generations of cis het males, white, that had the power and the money. Patriarchal doesn't matter that it's a specific, it's not integral to who they are. That's actually the point, right? It is that they are just the specific group of people who took power. One of the most patriarchal people in history was a female. And that was Queen Victoria, who is seen in history as the great Gloriana and the height at the time of the English realm. the British realm. I do not know. There are some technicalities there on what it is, but you know what? I don't really care, because colonialism is an anti-female thing done by a female. She was absolutely a horrible mother. She was absolutely a pretty horrible woman. She absolutely was anti-feminist, even as the Queen of England. And she was anti-people, or at least her realm was. So the specific people don't matter. The patriarchy is about the specific set of people. It could have been anyone. And in some other cultures and other times, it has been someone else. But in our current space and time, especially of North American standard culture, we come from that set of power, the set of white, cis, het males who took power, stole land, stole resources, collected them to themselves, and then said, "We are holier and better than thou because we stole resources." The fact that we can says that it is our God-given right. That's bullshit. I'd love to talk about a phrase that's come up recently, drama queen. Thank you very much. Shout out to them for doing a great influencer joke about having the same 24 hours in the day. That is one of those phrases that is so ableist, it hurts. Literally, it makes my body hurt to hear that. Like, it is just disgusting for people to say that people who are stuck in bed all day have the same 24 hours. That people who can't walk upstairs and have to do an extra 15 minutes of walking through a building, that they have the same 24 hours. Man, tell me you've never had a broken leg without telling me that you've never had a broken leg. Have you dealt with anything? Have you ever even twisted your ankle? Oh, that's just one of those things that people say. Toxic positivity is fabulous. It gets so much stuff done, especially when it is reverse victimized. It is, oh my gosh, I have such a hard life, but we all have the same 24 hours in the day. It's a unique combination that is brought to you by generally women, generally mean girls. And they, guess what? Uphold the patriarchy. Yep, women and female presenting people can choose to be on the side. It is not a name for men. Many of them are effed over by the system. It is not a name for cis or het or white, because many of them are screwed over by the system. It is about the power being collected in that space and the unique idea that that is somehow a moral or work failing of the people who aren't getting it done. But my experience is that disability is meted out with any rhyme or reason. It is sheer chance. It is simply what and who get hit. You might get hit by a bus today. Good luck with that. You could have a stroke, and then who would speak up for you now? You could be in bed for weeks on end. You could live in your room for 3 to 4 weeks out of nothing you did, and people would find a moral failing in it. Did any of my neighbors come and check on me? Did any of my neighbors check if I was physically able to do this? Did any of my neighbors offer to do it for me? Did any of my neighbors care that I wasn't okay? We have a culture that does not check if someone is ill. The concept that North America was built on people who brought each other a cup of sugar or food when they were ill, especially that within the Christian rhetoric of people that bring you a casserole from church ladies. I have found in my experience that the most traditional, that tradition being only about 100 years old and stemming mostly from Queen Victoria, that very short-lived tradition is a newfangled thing that isn't working. Every person for themselves is killing people. It is ruining people's lives. It is setting people homeless. And I could be one of them. I have more privilege than usual. I am white presenting. I am rich and educated presenting. And I could make $1 million a year, or I could have $5 in my bank account. But I would still look like I was doing okay. And the double-edged sword of privilege, which is that I could feel more comfortable being privileged. I'd rather look better, so I hide it. I don't help others. And that's where it starts. That's where it starts and it ends. You don't have to make a choice. Doing nothing is a choice too. Doing nothing to help somebody. Doing nothing to think about the trials and tribulations they might be dealing with. Invisible disability means that a person can place their moral values and metaphors on you. In a parking lot at Costco, they can see you not putting back your cart, and in their head they say, if you could get here and you could shop, then you can put it away. Have you ever walked out of a store ready to vomit and barely made it to your vehicle in time? Obviously not. Have you ever had your gastrointestinal tract fall apart on you? No. Have you ever pulled a muscle or thought you had the energy and all of a sudden were just sapped of everything because something started to hurt? Something started to imbalance. Something like POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, having your heart rate spike on you randomly because you stood up. Maybe you stood for too long and you didn't know it. And you barely got back to your vehicle and you don't know how you're going to get home and put your groceries away. Could you have? And that brings me to what I actually really want to say this morning, which is capacity is different than capability. The amount you can do is not related to the amount you know how to do. I was part of a successful construction team when I was young. I've run triathlon. I have worked 3 jobs at a time. I've also had a mini stroke. I've also been poisoned by medications so badly that I began to hallucinate and spent months on the couch with social anxiety. I have lost time, energy. But I will say absolutely immodestly against the way we're supposed to not be proud of ourselves. I know how to do just about everything. I have a weird memory that can remember how to spackle, how to mow the lawn, how to build, how to paint, how to ice a cake. People literally called me Mrs. Google for years because I'm the person who knows something about everything. And the jack of all trades saying, jack of all trades and master of none, is missing a step. It's actually jack of all trades, master of none, knower of all. And I'm one of those people that knows a lot about a lot, a little about a lot too. But actually, most people can't just pick up. And that is why that ability, that natural gift, which is a privilege given to me by my genes of being able to do junk loads of things, is also a loss. It is a lack of privilege with the time to do it. So I have this unique experience, I think, of having a huge gap between my capabilities and my capacity. And unfortunately, what usually occurs is that I have just enough time and energy to do an okay job and to be a pretty good person, because I do it in an hour or two that most people do in 8 hours. And so I appear average or good in my job. And then when I fail because I'm ill, it looks like I'm giving up. It looks like I'm being lazy. It looks like I'm not doing my job. I have been written up because no one looked at whether or not it was a disability. And speaking up about your capacity is a double-edged sword still in our culture, especially now in North America. I'm not American, but DEI being slashed, diversity, equity, and inclusion. What the? Including people is now evil. That's what your friendly fascist underlord is saying. And while Canadian politics are slightly better, we certainly have a rhetoric of the rich people are the ones who want to leave. And That is why I am so proud of my honorarily adopted tribe folk. I identify as being connected to the Buffalo Point tribe of Ojibwe Anishinaabe people. They are not my blood, but in that culture, adoption is as to blood. You are one, and I was accepted and welcomed there as my grandfather was before me and my family. And I think of it as another family of mine. I am careful not to say that it is a solitude of blood for me, but it is a solitude of growth. It is a solitude of life. It is something I experienced. It is something that I grew up as in a very racist area of Canada. And now we have Alberta, a province two over and a very oil-rich area. It's our Texas of the North, if you want to call it that has decided that they would like to break away as sovereign citizens. And the other day, we had a great capacity versus capability argument when many of the chiefs stood up and said, if you want to leave, leave, because this land isn't yours. And with all of the patriotism that's coming up about Canada stepping up together and saying we are not the same as the US. We align ourselves with the values of Europe and the rest of the world, more with the entire global north and hopefully the global south as well. But we are very different than the American Gestalt. We are very different than their values and our interests. There's lots of the same stuff happening. But overall, I would say the expectation is nothing like it. The basis of our connection to the country is based on, yes, colonialism, but it is also based on connection of people who are different rather than the so-called melting pot. We are a dysphoria. We are a quilt. We are lots of different people. But as proud as I was of speaking up as Canadians and saying we are very different than the Americans. We are not a fascist state. We are not the 51st state. Screw you. No way in hell. I believe just out of my own information and my own heart that Canadians would go to war with the US before, I mean physical war, before they would become part of the US. We are not the same. We are so very different. However, I thought that in that burgeoning of patriotism to say Canada is different, we lost the thread that was occurring about the Indigenous people in Canada and the idea that this is not something to be patriarch about. The Dominion of Canada is a post-colonial dominion. Queen Victoria of the fight between the French and English for more land, more resources, more money, more patriarchy. And I'm almost glad that Alberta made the mistake of stepping up and saying they wanted to go. Because if you look at the land, it is all treaty land. Treaties that have been ignored. Contracts that white men wrote and then gave to Indigenous people. Economic abuse. We'll write up a paper and you'll be restricted by it, but we won't. I live in an area of at least 10 million people in a couple hours drive, and between very large cities full of huge, shitty townhouses built up that all have water and gas lines and pools and dishwashers and every electronic smart feature you'd want. There are reserves set aside. Jailed lands stuck in the middle. You can drive from a city of 500,000 to a city of 500,000 and go around a piece of land that doesn't have clean water because it's the so-called Indigenous land. It's where the natives are, or the Indians, as they used to be called. Pejoratively. I've been called a lot more than that, too. They don't have water. Canadian citizens that don't have water because they say that they are both Canadian citizens and the Indigenous people who were here first. Screw you. Screw you for not giving them water. Why the hell isn't there a plan for that? So yeah, they stood up and said, hey, we're going to separate our land. And the chiefs stood up and did what was right and said, if you've forgotten, it's not your land. If you want to leave, you should leave. Capacity versus capability. Riches versus honor. There was more honor in the words of our chiefs that Turtle Island is more important and the peoples amongst them are more important than your money and your time, and you're saying that you are more important because you stole the most. My genetic disorder will steal not my life. It's not a death sentence, I like to say, but it's a life sentence. Well, I don't like to say it. I just like the saying. I will lose at least 1/3 of my life to being in bed, to being ill. People always ask me, well, how can you do so many things? You're interested in so much stuff. You do so many things. You've done so many things in your life. Yes, because I am so afraid that I will not have the time other people had. By my age, my father was headed towards a wheelchair, and he only lived with intense care for a decade and a chunk more. I worry every day that it will be my last for walking if something happened to my spine or my brain or my limbs. I have expected to be in a wheelchair my entire life. It was a when and not an if. Capacity was something that I knew I was never going to have. So I actually fought for capability. I fought to do everything I wanted early. I fought for my health, to be here. I have never fought my body, but I have fought the world for the things I deserve. That even if my disability is invisible, I shouldn't have to fight the systems. I shouldn't have to fight the people, and I shouldn't have to fight the metaphors in people's brains that I don't know how to do something, don't care to do something, or deserve fines and notes and askewed glances for not being able to do something I know perfectly well how to. I know perfectly well that I want to, but I know perfectly well that I cannot. And if your first thought is that that means I need to be yelled at, then you believe that people do well when they wanna. I believe that people do well when they can. And the younger you are, and the more vulnerable you are, and the more strikes you have against you, the more I find that those people do well when they can. Ross Greene's view of the world with collaborative, proactive solution sets is designed for children and teenagers. Adults, it becomes a little more complicated because they can choose to do badly when they want to as well. But I think that that has built up from a world that said that you only do well when you wanna. Ross Greene's book, Raising Humans, says that children start off the opposite of manipulative, the opposite of lazy, the opposite of good babies, which implies the presence of bad babies. There is no such thing. They do not have the capability or the capacity. When you label these things on other people, you're confessing. You're confessing your metaphor. There's a phrase which I think is in the Tao of War or similar that says, when a friend insults, tell you what you need to strengthen, but that when an enemy insults you, they speak their weakness. They tell you their metaphor of what is good and bad. So, thank you, neighbors, for confessing your values, your thoughts, your care, and the fact that you are not neighbors, you are simply people who live down the street. And it is time for neighbors by metaphor, and that's why I do lives. That's why I do podcasts. I'm never going to care how many subscribers I have. I don't make a cent. I do this just so I'm one voice on the internet that says, hey, did you know that you're capable, that you're worth it? that you deserve love, you deserve care. And when other people say things about you, you shouldn't, needn't, don't internalize them as about you. They're about the mean girl who says them. Don't fall for their metaphors. Just because you don't have capacity doesn't mean that you're not capable. In fact, if you're balancing an invisible disability and still pulling off most of what other people do, doesn't that say that you're actually more capable than others? You can do two things at once. You can do more things at once. You can care about your body and the things you have to do and still look average. That actually means that your capability is above average. If you're living with an invisible chronic disability, I want you to start thinking of yourself as above average, because you are probably one of the most capable people out there. Thanks for listening. I hope to get a few more of my videos out. I had a teaser up. I'm hoping to get that one edited and done. The YouTube algorithm doesn't like capacity. It doesn't like when you take a break, but that's okay. I'll still get it out, and I'm not going to listen to what they think about my upload cycle. If you want your story told, please contact me by my Google form in the description for me reading your story and commenting on it about misdiagnosis, good stories of invisible disability, horror stories of invisible disability. If you'd like to be a guest, go ahead and fill out the form or email me at the attached email. And I hope that you have the day you deserve. My name is Maria, and I am Little Misdiagnosed.